You're in a very busy day meeting investors. Thank you so much for meeting us during your investor day. Give us a sense of the mood that you're feeling right now. You've been to these so many times annually. What has changed in investor sentiment right now about your country?
Well, Shery, it's great to talk to you again. I think the last time we spoke was a year ago. And the main changes that we see right now are that investors are less concerned about the immediate juncture. The Chilean economy is completing a very substantial adjustment, cutting inflation and also rebalancing the economy. So now investors are putting their attention much more on medium to longer term issues. And that's a good place to be.
Perhaps some of the commodities investments, especially, I mentioned copper, but of course you're huge in lithium as well. There's been a little bit of concern, though, about the national strategy from the government. What do you say to that criticism that a state-led initiative could slow down and Chile could actually lose competitive edge in this industry?
Well, what I would say is that at least in mining, usually there is a larger role for governments, either as regulators, as granting concessions, or being partners. And in our case, in the case of the lithium, what we're defining is a strategy where projects can basically evolve through joint ventures with the government, particularly with Codelco, the copper state company, that, as we all know, is a leading company in the world. And that would allow to combine, on the one hand, the capacity of governments or the Chilean government to deal and to keep track of environmental and social sustainability issues, and the ability of the private sector to provide not only capital, but technology in particular. And technologies will be very important in the development of this industry, because right now the technologies that are currently under use are very intensive in the use of water, and water is very scarce in that part of the world. So new projects are expected to integrate direct extraction technologies that will improve the profitability and the productivity of that industry.
Let's talk a little bit about those sustainability issues that you mentioned, because we heard that Chile is also tapping international debt markets for the first time this year, and that includes swapping up old bonds for those new sustainability-linked securities. What's the end goal here? Do you have a target? Do you want to make everything ESG-linked? What does it mean in terms of why this strategy in particular and not perhaps a step-down option?
Yes, well, in terms of our international debt, it is already 60% into green or sustainability-linked bonds. This is our second SLB issuance after a couple of years ago. And what we are seeking here is basically the greenium, the margin on rates for considering the demand for this kind of bonds. And then on the other hand, also to keep very strong commitments from the current and future administrations to environmental sustainability. And one issue that we added in this SLB, which is women's participation in the economy.
Let's talk a little bit more about those long-term strategies for the government, because you've talked about really presenting that tax reform proposals in Chile in the next few weeks. We have heard also reports that potentially this could be delayed until next year. So how confident are you that you'll have the backing of Congress? And do you have a backup plan?
Yes, well, we have a much stronger strategy this time. We are talking of a fiscal covenant that includes not only taxation, but also spending priorities, also improving on fiscal efficiency and fostering growth. So that brings all the different dimensions of fiscal space together to address issues that are relevant for the country. This is not just an issue for the government. improving pensions, improving health services, and citizen security are things that are at the very top of priorities for Chilean citizens.
Minister, I have to ask you, as a former central bank governor for Chile, what do you make of these signals that we're getting from monetary authorities that we might see rate cuts in July? And we are even seeing board members in the last meeting voting for a 50 basis point cut now. Would you say that's the appropriate pace to go forward?
Yes, well, first of all, I think it's important to be aware that Chile started tightening monetary policy much earlier than other countries. Chile started in June 2021, that is 9 months before the Federal Reserve. And therefore, it is likely that they can turn around monetary policy earlier than other countries as well. Given that the economy has undergone very substantial adjustment, as I said earlier, by bringing down consumption that was very strong in 2021 and led to an overheating of the economy, then the economy is currently prepared to move towards an easing of monetary policy. And as you mentioned, the central bank signaled that that might start as early as next month.
Would you say that 50 basis points is an appropriate reduction at this point?
Well, I wouldn't dare give a figure for the central bank. We are very respectful of the autonomy of the central bank. But I mean, this kind of divide voting is very common when monetary policy is sort of turning around and different members of the board have their own assessments of how fast they can go.